Wendy and her team are forging an engineering and design partnership to establish a deeply technologically grounded future where creativity is fully integrated into the projects that Sapient works on. Um, we've heard a lot about cooperation as well as collaboration. Well, fumbling a lot. We've heard a lot about cooperation as well as collaboration amidst a lot of talks being shared at Remote Design Week. Wendy will be talking about the paradigms and data behind distributed work and how we are dealing with cooperation versus collaboration today.
All right, thanks a lot, Preet. I'm gonna get my screen sharing here as we get along. I'm doing this on Canva for the first time, so for those of you who work there or have tried it, pretty fun and pretty easy to make this presentation. So as Preet noted, I'm Wendy Johansson. I'm here to talk a little bit about cooperation versus collaboration culture. And a lot of this for me was inspired by the CX report that John Maeda puts together every year, which was formerly known as the Design and Tech Report. Maybe you've read it. And this year being renamed as the CX Report. And as South by Southwest got canceled and basically every event started kind of ending up virtual, like this wonderful one this week, it's been really interesting to kind of see the massive information come out about, turn on your camera, put some pants on. That's great. Those are the basics. But I think we're a few weeks too far for that conversation anymore. So today we'll talk a bit about this by way of introduction. I am working at a company today called Publicis Sapient, and we're a really interesting company. We are a global conglomerate. And on the Sapient side of things, we really focus on digital business transformation. So really those end-to-end experiences rather than a single touch point for the users. And prior to that, I am actually living here in San Francisco today and have been here for 15, 20 years. And I've worked at several startups, early stage, and most recently co-founded my own company with a couple of great colleagues and ex-colleagues and friends. And it was a company called Wiseline, where we basically built a global consulting firm, as well as a couple of things around startup accelerators and something called Wiseline Academy, where we were championing technology education in emerging markets like Vietnam, Thailand, and all over Latin America. So you can consider me a startup fiend, a tech education pioneer, as well as a women in tech champion. Looking a little, windblown there in that middle, kind of like a superhero, I'd like to think. But moving along. Today, we're all working from home. We're working distributed. I like to think of this as distributed because when I think working remotely, I think that I'm coming home to work remotely because I have to take care of a personal obligation, or I have a big delivery coming, or I'm thinking of a colleague who's by themselves where there's no office and they're working remotely by themselves out there, in Colorado or something. And so as we've kind of adjusted to this culture, my team, just want to share a couple of things here, have been doing the usual. We had a couple of themes going on, the pets of our experience team, the plants of our experience team. You can see some of these here on the left. And as children kind of started creeping into the video calls and, you would hear them always wondering like, hey, who's this, mommy? And we decided to actually have something kind of fun with Envision Freehand. We did a kids happy hour, whether it's milk or alcohol, people invited their kids and we were kind of organized and we had this theme of a zoo within Envision Freehand. But once kids got a hold of it, as you can see, it kind of went crazy here in the middle. And then on the far right, everyone's talking about all these meetings that they have. You have your work meetings, you have your virtual hangouts, you have your happy hours, you have your team check-ins, you have your office check-ins, you have your company town halls. And it was just a bit of screen and video fatigue. And so we came up with a bit of an exercise as COVID kind of came along called the anxiety party. And you can read a little bit more about that at bit.ly/anxiety board. I did a Twitter thread about how to put that together. And it's really just an asynchronous, anonymous way for people on your team to really just kind of cathartically let go of those anxieties that are burdening them, as well as for others to read those anxieties and realize, I'm not the only person who feels this way, or even have some empathy for people in situations who have different lives than you do. So this is kind of what we're doing today with our experience organization at Publicis Sapient. And we're really adjusting rapidly, having been a company that was fully on site in offices, either with each other or with our clients. So this whole remote video on everything is quite new to most of our company. And so today we're going to talk a bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then John Maeda's hierarchy of work, cooperation versus collaboration. But more importantly, we're going to talk about this together. I think there have been a lot of great talks this week about all these different collaboration tools, and I wanted to show one of them. So in the meantime, you should see in different chats everywhere, and also here on my screen, if you go to menti.com on your phone or on your computer, and enter this code 179886. It'll just put you in a queue, and basically we'll get ready for when the interaction starts here. But let's get on here. I'm sure most of you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so I'm going to go through this a little quickly, just as a reminder and refresher for you out there. It really is, it's this motivational theory in psychology about the tiers of human need. And that basic tier is really those physiological needs: air, food, water. You know, you need to survive. Literally, your body needs to survive. Also, you as a human, you need shelter, you need sleep, you need clothing. These are those kind of physiological needs that help you survive and continue moving on in the world. The next tier of that are your safety needs. You know, once your body is surviving, you know, how do you actually provide for that body? So you need those safety needs, which is around personal security. You're not under threat. Bears aren't after you. You know, global pandemics aren't after you. And you have employment, hopefully, resources, health, property. So these are really safety needs after our basic physiological. And then we move into love and belonging. This I like to think of as being part of a tribe, whether that's a tribe of your friends that you've known since, you know, high school or college, or even a tribe of people in your city with similar interests to you, like a bison club or a beer tasting club. And those personal relationships that you may have. You know, you have your one best friend you can always talk to about certain things, or your significant other, or a sibling, or even a confidant of any sort, whether that's personal or professional. It's that sense of connection and belonging that is really an essential need for humans. And then moving into esteem. Once you've built up these three tiers, this is where you start thinking about you. Like, how do I build myself up? Where do I get that status, that recognition? How do I build my respect, whether that's external respect from the community in my environment, or self-respect, self-esteem, and have that freedom to move forward and not be burdened by, you know, kind of those lingering questions. And finally, after that, you have that self-actualization moment, you know, where you become that in movies. It's that light you see, that light bulb that goes on off your head, where you finally have that desire to become the most that you can be. And that's really the hierarchy of needs today. And now I'd like to jump in to Menti with you. If we go on over here, great. I see some folks are in here and hitting that like button. So we're going to get started. And I would love to know, where were you on this hierarchy before COVID-19 happened? So depending on the country you're in, before January, before February, before March, but during that period before COVID-19, where were you? And we'll give this a couple of moments to start building up. These are live streams, so there's always a little delay. I'm starting to see, wow, somebody self-actualized before COVID. There's two people, that's great. And there's also people along the different parts of the spectrum on esteem, love and belonging, safety needs, physiological needs. I see esteem building quite a bit here. So as a reminder, esteem, it's that need for respect, status, recognition, the self, you know, that's maybe where that being of self is created, rather than just being part of the tribe, you know, having a place and a body. You start realizing who you are. I'm going to give this a little more time as it's growing quite a bit. So we're kind of seeing a natural bell curve here, kind of where I expected around esteem. All right. I'm going to cap this around 125 people, and we're going to move to the next one. So that's where you were on the hierarchy before COVID-19. We're seeing it really peaking around love, belonging, and esteem. So let's go to the next question. In this moment, where are you on the hierarchy now? We're still seeing self-actualizers pop up quite quickly, but if you're in Italy, it is a different environment than it was 2 months ago. If you're in New York City, it's changed quite a bit. If you're coming from Shanghai, that's also very different because now Shanghai is kind of moving back into this new normal with China and some other countries in Asia. So what we're starting to see here is a trend where a lot of folks are more focused on safety needs, love and belonging. The things that were peaking before around esteem, that's starting to drop. And, with the market and the economy and where people are today with their jobs, and, hopefully you're here at this conference to be able to connect with others and also help others in this design community. I think this is the reality. We're expecting that we've all kind of fallen down the hierarchy of needs in a very different way. Some of us are really just struggling on our basic physiological needs, getting our safety needs in place, and then around love and belonging. All right, I'm going to dive back in here. So we kind of saw where we are pre and post COVID. And I think that's really interesting kind of experiment here to take a look at, because what we're going to focus on next is, how does that hierarchy of needs translate to a hierarchy of work? So when we think about a hierarchy of work, this is something that John Maeda put together for his CX Report Appendix, which was really focused on remote and distributed work and the computational experiences that work around this. The basis of work starts with co-location. So co-location, it's the company, the office. It's the thing that you actually go into for that interview or the first time you've heard about the company and presents the brand that they've worked on. And it's that stirring pot for the culture. That's where it happens. Like the culture, people often associate with that physical office where the people are. But then when we start to think about companies like GitLab or Envision or even Buffer, 37 Signals, Automatic, these are all distributed companies. They don't have big core offices where there's a majority of people and then a couple of folks here and there working outside. So they still make it work without that co-location, without that sense of being together at a physical base camp. Same thing for this conference. If we think about it, we're all on Slack, we're all at the same conference, and there's still a lot of talking and mingling and getting together. We're having a virtual hang later. So I think there are ways to think beyond co-location as a physical location. So that's the basic of that hierarchy first is, where are the people, I think is the best way to put that. Next, when we start thinking about cooperation, so we get a sense of what is the company, the office, the people, whether that's virtual or in a physical location. Next, we start thinking about, well, now I'm around all these people in this hierarchy of work. How do I earn attention? Through cooperation. And cooperation is really that knowledge exchange where you're putting things out there and you're also receiving things back in. And in a lot of ways, you can think about that as cooperation is very transactional. Maybe it's just the bare minimum, but the thing is, it's still goodwill. It's a sense of connection and giving us that belonging that we seek with other people. And so when we think about cooperation, it's very much mapped to the hierarchy in creating that tribe, that sense of belonging again. As we continue to build up, this is where collaboration comes about. Collaboration is we're now working together. We're working with each other, we're recognizing our skills, our areas of expertise, and we're really starting to build our esteem with each other. We're committing and taking accountability and responsibility together with each other and recognizing each of our kind of special skills. And so I think that's really important in this collaborative nature is other than just building esteem, which is definitely on the hierarchy of needs, but you're building it with each other rather than alone. So that final tier in that hierarchy of work is camaraderie. When we take a look at that, that's self-actualization again. A couple of you had indicated on the hierarchy that you have that. You're actualized. But are you actualized at work? Do you have that camaraderie? Are you in that place where you're sharing the wins and the losses that make work sweeter? Are you going to work because of your colleagues, not because of the work or the environment or the fancy tools or whatnot? And that's when your team has your back. You're in that state of camaraderie, and we're moving forward and very much self-actualized. So I think when you see yourself or colleagues or even friends who are absolutely in love with their job, that's where they've kind of self-actualized that hierarchy of work. So when we take a look at this, it's actually very interesting. John also wrote this book that released last fall. It's called How to Speak Machine, Computational Design for the Rest of Us. And it's a really great book. And one thing that always stuck out to me is this quote, which he also included in his CX report, is that cooperation is working with others at an arm's length. When you think about that arm's length, it's kind of that behind the desk transaction, almost like if you're going to, in the US, the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, you hand them a paper form behind the desk and they hand you something back. That's cooperation. We're transacting. But when we think about this kind of socially distant environment that we have, collaboration is where we have our arms hugged around each other. So rather than our real arms, we have our virtual arms hugged around each other. We're being responsive to each other's needs. We're caring for each other. We're perhaps asking more about how our colleagues are doing, and we're literally seeing into their lives. Like right now on video, you can see my office, you can see my yellow walls, you can see my cat statues on one side. So you really literally have a glimpse into somebody's life. And in that way, you're collaborating and kind of creating that care for people in a different way than just that transactional relationship of, I care about what you can output for me on this project. So let's jump back in Menti for a moment. We're going to go here, and we're going to ask this next question on Menti. I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and we're going to go at this fairly quickly. So I want to know what tools you and your team use to enable cooperation. And then the next question is going to ask you what tools you and your team use to enable collaboration. So as you think about this, think about how you might separate those 2 things. We'll start with cooperation first. Skype, absolutely. Slack, Zoom. We can set up a meeting, we can send it to each other, and it's very transactional because I will send you a video meeting or I will send you a message on Skype or Slack, and I'll expect you to transact and return and respond and join my meeting or send me a message back. I'm seeing Figma and Mural, Asana, project management software. That is absolute cooperation. What are the tasks? Where are they moving along? Seeing a couple more video and chat things in here, like MS Teams. Wow, this is moving fast. Even I can't read now. Google Hangouts. And then we're also seeing some big systems. Similar to Asana, we have Confluence. Wow, this is moving so fast. I've never done it with so many people where there's so many different words. We're taking a look at Outlook, email. It's very much the basis of cooperation. It's like snail mail. I'm sending you a letter and I patiently await your response. Office 365, absolutely. I see a sad face. There's a lot of that going around. All right, but it looks like when we're thinking about cooperation, we're definitely thinking kind of Zoom, Figma, email, Teams, Mural. Confluence is getting big in there, Confluence and Jira. Let's take a look at the next question. What tools do you and your team use to enable collaboration? Now, thinking again about cooperation being that kind of transactional goodwill, and collaboration being working together, working with each other, building esteem with each other. I like this. The tool that you're using to enable collaboration is smiling. I hope you literally mean smiling, and not that there's some tool out there named Smiling that I don't know about. But I'm seeing things in here like Mural, Envision Cloud, Abstract, Envision, Adobe XD. Absolutely. These were built for collaboration, for teams to dive in and really be working live. And that's exactly kind of where this future is headed, right? When we looked at something like Microsoft Teams showing up in the previous slide, or Office 365, that was very transactional, because while 365 does have, for example, a couple of cloud features for collaboration, it often gets locked up if there's too many people collaborating on the same PowerPoint or Word doc, versus if you go in here, you see Google Docs, Google Meet, Figma. This is cloud collaboration. We're all in the same file. It's auto-saving. Things are moving very quickly. Great. So we have Mural, Figma, Slack, Google Docs really standing out as differentiators here. So we're going to go back over here and talk briefly about these cooperation versus collaboration tools. So I kind of noted this as we were seeing these tools fly in, but when we're talking about cooperation, this is a one-to-one. You know, we're taking turns with a file. We're doing version control. We're archiving. We're tracking changes. I'm sending you an email. It's this very much like I'm putting a signal out to the world and I'm waiting for a response. Kind of similar to when you're listening to the boss. You know, you're getting those long lectures. You have this kind of hierarchy that you're working on, and it's very much a Harvard Business Review style of effective communication when we think about cooperation. Now, none of these things are bad. It's not black and white, but when we measure them against collaboration, when we have live editing, online whiteboarding, when we have interactive annotating, which, for example, if I allowed you to annotate and we were on a one-on-one meeting right here, you could actually go ahead and annotate on my screen sharing with Zoom itself. When you're actually listening to each other and you're being very inclusive, I would say that's really the key difference when we're thinking about cooperation versus collaboration. And again, one isn't better than the other. They're just different modes of working, right? And to sum it up, if you're really thinking about collaboration, it's kind of that startup style, frictionless teamwork in the cloud, wherever that cloud is, whatever tool is supporting that. So this is really what we're talking about when we're thinking cooperation versus collaboration. Now, if we take a look at that as a matrix kind of matched up against co-location and camaraderie, which was on the bottom and the top of Maeda's hierarchy of work, I think it's quite interesting to think about where this fits, right? So when we take a look at everything, it's, like I said, not black and white. Cooperation isn't the bad, collaboration isn't the good. It's actually a mix of all of this, because cooperation, for example, can actually start off poorly in the lower tiers of Maeda's hierarchy of work. For example, if you down here, if you're cooperative but you're co-located, you have these work silos. You know, work silos aren't a bad thing though. If we're in an office or if we're in a place and time where we're actually being cooperative, but we're kind of co-located, it works really well for deep work. Things like research, coming back out, you know, with the report. Insights are created this way, but it is very transactional. You know, research, reports, insights, analytics, it's very one-to-many. It's a readout. But if you take cooperation and you match that up with camaraderie, this is actually kind of a sweet spot. You have the wisdom of the crowds. You have those diverse perspectives, the data, the outcomes. An example of that, cross-functional Scrum teams. When you have design, engineering, and product, they're delivering amazing things based on, you know, ease of use for the user, number of bugs, time to market. And that's really cooperative. But if you make that even more cooperative by throwing in a couple of other team members in there, like business operations, marketing, you can start seeing that entire customer life cycle, including time and costs, as well as the biases of the people who are coming in and using your systems already. Now over here, collaboration, it's not always all good. If you have collaboration and camaraderie, you actually end up with groupthink. When groupthink, it's not necessarily the best thing. You risk that groupthink with everyone agreeing, everyone being on the same page, everybody voting on the same kind of clusters in an infinity diagram, and kind of pre-biasing, you know, those themes that we see when we create things in online whiteboarding tools. So collaborative and camaraderie could actually be a bit of a danger zone for us. But when we take a look down here, collaboration and co-location, this is the biggest struggle of a lot of companies who had to adapt to this kind of virtual distributed remote work environment today. we're lacking serendipity, those water cooler moments where, you know, we meet up because I'm grabbing a soda and you're grabbing an apple, and we start realizing that we're working on two projects that could actually overlap, but we didn't know that. So we serendipitously came to that realization. Or overhearing coworkers moments, you know, somebody's talking to somebody about a problem they're trying to solve, and you overhear it and realize, wait, I can help you on that because I've done something similar, or I'm super interested. And so a lot of us are struggling to recreate the serendipity. And I think there's a lot of different ways that we can touch on that. And I'm sure Koy and I will talk about that a bit next in our fireside chat. But one last bit here, you know, this is the Johansson's cat tricks because it's a 2x2 matrix that starts with a bunch of things with C. And I realized that I could call it a cat tricks, and I really love cats. So, you know, silly name for a new paradigm to think about. But I think my point here is really just around cooperation and collaboration. This is not a black and white story. Doing one and doing the other doesn't mean you're doing well or you're doing poorly. It really depends on that hierarchy of work and where your team or you individually sit within that hierarchy today. So thanks a lot. I want to remind you all to pay a compliment to a fellow human today. Be kind to each other. And I'm going to stop sharing in a couple of seconds, and then we will dive into our fireside chat.